Now that I'm connected though, I put a little ram mount here on the front of my handlebars. Oh, we're getting wet. Oh, God damn it. What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. I've got sort of a longer term e-bike review for you guys today, and I know I'm super late to the party on this one. It's funny how I actually acquired this bike because I have known about Super 73 for a long time. I actually went and visited them at their headquarters down in Southern California. While I was down there, I actually rode this exact model of bike. We're talking about the Super 73 RX. This bike has been out for quite a while now, and there's a ton of videos out there, and I've owned this bike for a few months now, and I've just never really made a video on it, so that's what we're gonna do today. Now, late last year, I was reviewing a bunch of different e-bikes when I found out that there is a local e-bike dealer here in Denver, Colorado. It's called eBikes USA. I went and paid them a visit, and their showroom was pretty overwhelming, I'm not gonna lie. They had just about every single e-bike that I've ever reviewed and a lot more, including Super 73s. Their selection ranged from really beginner e-bikes all the way up to things like this bike that we're looking at today, and they got a mixture of basically everything in between. They happen to have this Rhino Gray Super 73 RX sitting there in their showroom, and I had to buy it. So if you're in the Denver area and you're looking at picking up an e-bike, I would highly recommend checking them out. I'll actually leave a link to their shop in the description down below. So again, I'm super late to this party. You guys have seen review after review on the Super 73 RX, but I'm gonna give you guys my take on it today, and we'll go for a little ride. Now, the RX still holds true to all of Super 73's common features found on their lower end models, but this one features their powerful R-Series drive system, upgraded brakes, and the best part, fully adjustable dual suspension. Up front, there's an inverted coil spring fork with air assist, and in the rear you will find a piggyback coilover monoshock, both of which are completely adjustable for preload, compression, and rebound. There are integrated LED lights in both the front and the rear, which can be activated by simply holding the up button for a few seconds. The taillight also acts as a brake light, which is a really nice feature not found on a whole lot of other e-bikes. The 960 watt-hour battery is removable with a key, and it can easily be charged on or off the bike with a standard 110 volt outlet. From a full charge, this will give you 40 miles of range at about 20 miles an hour using the thumb throttle, or 75 plus miles of range using the Eco pedal assist mode. Speaking of the different riding modes, you have about 4 different options to pick from, levels 1 through 4, which increase at an increment of about 25% with each click. These different selections will allow the motor to act as a class 1 through 3 e-bike with 750 watts nominal and 1200 watts peak output. You can also dive into the RX a little bit deeper if you download the Super 73 app, which is available on Android and iPhones. With this app, you can unlock even more modes, with the highest being an off-road mode, giving you a peak output of 2300 watts, allowing the bike to reach speeds of up to 30 miles per hour. On top of all that, this bike is insanely aesthetically pleasing, super clean, really nice welds all throughout the bike, and you can tell that this thing is not your average off-the-shelf e-bike. Super 73 put a lot of research and development into these bikes, and it's really one of a kind. Now, I could stand here and talk about this thing all day, but it would be a whole lot better if we just went for a ride. So let's go for a cruise around the neighborhood and see what the Super 73 RX is all about. Alright guys, it is now a new day. I forgot one important thing to note about the Super 73, and that is to charge this thing, it needs to be on. When I was filming in the beginning of the video, I had like maybe 20-25% battery left, and I was like, if I'm gonna go for a long ride, I want to charge this thing. So I went to my garage, plugged it in, and I forgot that this thing needs to be on while it's charging. So by the time I turned it back on, this thing has a very long charge time with the charger that I have. So one of the downsides is that this thing takes like 6 to 7 hours to charge. So that's kind of annoying, but at the same time, the charge lasts for a really long time. I don't have a ton of miles on the Super 73 RX right now, so I've really only charged it like maybe 2 or 3 times. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is the charge times. You can definitely ride it pretty much all day unless you're like on the bike for 20 hours at a time and you're using the thumb throttle and you're in pedal assist mode 4. So charge times are long, but it kind of makes up for it with the actual range that this thing has. Now I'm actually using one new feature on this bike that I never used before. My phone automatically connects to the bike whenever I open up the app, which is nice, but initially I didn't think there was a ton of functionality to it. Now that I'm connected though, I put a little RAM mount here on the front of my handlebars. Oh, we're getting wet. Oh, god damn it. Oh man. Now that I have my phone connected to the app, I put in my buddy's address and I'm gonna ride over to his house. It's giving me turn-by-turn directions here on my phone, but also the directions sort of mimic themselves over here on the little control module. Might be a little bit buggy because right now it's not telling me how long I have to turn. It kind of comes and goes when that wants to work and when it doesn't want to work. But this integration has been pretty seamless, other than it not actually showing me how long I have until I turn right now. This does have voice functionality as well, so if I have that on, it'll tell me when I actually need to turn, but kind of cool that that is integrated into the app and it's tracking my ride as I'm going. Normal GPS directions, like say on Apple or Google Maps, it's going to take me a bike route, but I found that when I put in an address using the Super 73 app, it really fine-tunes the bike route. That way there are bike lanes. It's generally not taking me across really busy intersections, like this right here is probably one of the busiest ones that I will cross on this ride. So this is my first time using the actual phone app while I'm riding, but so far it seems to be pretty nice. Now you may be able to see over here in 528 feet I'm going to turn left, and I do not have turn signals on this thing, so gotta be careful. Now for the actual riding experience on the Super 73 RX itself, I love the ergonomics of e-bikes that are sort of positioned like this. It truly feels like a motorcycle or a scooter. We got the long sort of like banana seat. The bars are kind of upright. It almost feels like I'm kind of riding on the Suron or any other kind of dirt bike for that matter. There is quite a lot of aftermarket support for these bikes, so it would be kind of cool to get a little bit lower bars, almost like cafe racer style bike. But how this thing sits as it's completely stock like it is now, it's definitely really comfortable. It's maneuverable with the bars being up high. I can really flick this bike around. This thing does weigh 80 pounds, so it's definitely on the heavier side for an e-bike, but given all of the features and the build quality of this thing, that weight does not deter me at all. Now for the controls, we do have hydraulic brakes, and these things stop the bike super quickly. There are also sensors in these, like on most electric bikes, so if I'm pedaling, currently I'm in pedal assist mode 4, so this is like the super mode. Very effortless when I start pedaling, and then if I grab the brakes, you can tell that it sort of cuts out the motor. So safety feature there. If you wanted to get rid of that, you could disconnect the sensors. I may do that if I want to learn how to wheelie this thing. Right up here is kind of rat's nesty. There's a bunch of wires here for the controller, the brakes, the thumb throttle, and all that stuff. There are also two little wires right here, which I believe are actually for turn signal modules. It looks like you would mount them up right here. I haven't seen those in person yet. I don't know if that's something that Super 73 is selling or is planning on selling. But since this thing already kind of feels like a scooter, a moped, maybe a really low-powered motorcycle, it would be cool to have like a bar end mirror and turn signals on here, because this thing is pretty dang quick. So outside of the brakes and the electrical stuff up here, we have the thumb throttle over here on my right-hand side. So I simply just push that down and we've got power to go up this little hill. On the left-hand side, we do have a horn next to the control module. It's decent. It's not like super loud, but if you need to get someone's attention, that'll definitely do it. And then for the controls itself, let's actually back this down to no pedal assist. So this bike is a fixed gear bike. When I'm just pedaling like this, looks like we're going about 11 miles per hour, maybe 10 miles an hour. But as soon as you encounter a hill, you're using all of your leg power to push an 80-pound bike up a hill. So if this thing dies, you could ride it just as a standard bike, but it's not going to be very quick and you're gonna exert a lot of energy. So if I press up on the up arrow, now we are in pedal assist mode 1. Let's go a little bit more. Pedal assist mode 2. Pedal assist mode 3. now it's becoming very effortless. And then the super mode, whew, that picks up super quickly, and now we are cruising 19, 20 miles an hour, 21, 22, 23. So this is giving me almost zero resistance right here. I'm probably speeding through this neighborhood, doing 31 miles an hour, almost 32. 32 miles an hour, 32 and a half. Might be able to do 33, but there's a stop sign here. So I currently have the RX in sort of like the off-road, the unlocked mode, which gives me full power to that rear motor back there. And this thing is just so smooth. One thing that I'm really happy about when it comes to these higher end Super 73s is that they are using a torque sensor as opposed to a cadence sensor. If you're not familiar with e-bikes, essentially a cadence sensor is going to deliver power through the pedal assist modes when it senses you actually turning the crank. A torque sensor is going to give you the amount of power that you put into the bike. So right now I'm in pedal assist mode 4. If I very lightly pedal, it's just going to give me a little bit of power, which is still quite a lot of power when you're in pedal assist mode 4. But then if I pedal faster, it's going to up that speed, essentially like you're going light on the thumb throttle, and then the more you pedal, it's like pushing all the way down on the thumb throttle. If I had the choice, I would definitely choose a torque sensor over a cadence sensor on most bikes. Generally, they are not quite as touchy as a cadence sensor. Let's press this button over here to cross. In some of my other e-bike videos, you'll notice that right now when I'm pedaling, lightly pedaling, it picks up almost instantly. And now when I stop pedaling, it cuts out almost immediately. Cadence sensors, depending on what manufacturer the bike is actually coming from, they can be a little bit delayed. They can be super touchy right when you take off, and then they can sort of keep going after you're done pedaling. The torque sensor that they're using on here feels pretty great. I just missed my turn because I'm not paying attention. So the RX being Super 73's current like flagship bike, their biggest and best bike. I'm really glad that they're using a torque sensor, and it's very smooth. I like it a lot. Now, one of the reasons why I went with the RX as opposed to some of the other Super 73 models is because of the full suspension. We have a rear shock, we have the front forks, all of which are completely adjustable for compression, rebound, preload. So depending on how you're riding, if you're riding on street like this here, maybe just commuting, if you're riding on a trail, off-road, getting a little wild, doing some wheelies, maybe hitting jumps. I don't really recommend that, but I guess you could. You can dial in the suspension for how you actually want to ride. They are using DNM front forks as well as the rear piggyback monoshock, which is sort of like a coilover, and I have no complaints. I do have DNM suspension on the Sur-Ron, and that is also fully adjustable. Since the bike is on the heavier side, coming in at 80 pounds, it's pretty nice that they allow you to adjust the suspension, especially for different riders. I currently weigh about 175 pounds. This thing can take a rider of up to 325 pounds, I believe, so even big boys out there can ride a Super 73 and be pretty comfortable while you're doing it. Now, I'm typically riding around on this bike sort of like it's a scooter or a moped, kind of riding on the streets. Because it has pedals, I'm able to ride on bike trails as well, which is nice. Some places and areas may frown upon that, but it is truly a bicycle. Although it is powered and it is pretty dang powerful, I can turn off the electronics and ride it as a standard bike. But when you have all this power, why would you want to do that? So I don't feel bad about riding on bike paths like this right here. I would definitely not take something like my Sur-Ron on bike paths like this, because people will get pissed off very quickly when you're riding something that's more of like a motorcycle. This thing is sort of like a motorcycle in disguise. Let's actually come to a stop here. Check out the acceleration with the thumb throttle. So pedal assist modes, we got Eco, Tour, Sport, and Super mode, 1 through 3. Again, it sort of increases in increments of 25. Now from a dead stop, let's just press on the thumb throttle. You'll notice that I do not have to pedal, and the bike takes off. Already doing 10 miles an hour, 15, 18. Picks up pretty good. Now off of the line, I think this thing would be very comparable to my Honda Ruckus. That is a street legal scooter, about 49cc. It's very slow for something with a motor, but you can ride it on the road and you can park on sidewalks when you're in cities that allow it. Let's actually go from a dead stop here, just throttle, doing 10 miles an hour, 12, 14, 17, 19, 21, 23, 27, 28, and 30. I'll put a little timer up on the screen there so you guys can see how quickly that was. Relatively flat. Again, I weigh 175 pounds. This thing gets up and moves. Now, of course, you will experience a little bit of battery sag once the bike is closer to the end of its life. I think I've ridden about 8 miles now, and I've used a quarter of my battery. I haven't actually ridden this thing all the way down until it was completely dead, but I may actually do that today. Based off of my experience with my personal Super 73 and others that I've ridden, I don't think Super 73 is lying about their specs. So if you're riding this at about 20 miles an hour, so without actually unlocking it through the settings, you're probably going to be able to get about 40 miles out of a charge. If you're riding it on eco mode, so just like pedal assist 1, you'll probably be doing like 10 to 15 miles an hour. Then you're looking at about 70, 75 miles. I'll probably never ride the bike like that, but it is nice to know that you can ride this thing for a pretty good distance. There we go, 8.8 miles to my destination. I have 75% charge left, and I was doing about 28 miles per hour. Max speed 55. That's a little bit off, but 30 minutes on the bike. Not too bad. The little indicator even says arrived over here. Pretty cool. Alright guys, back on the bike for a few more thoughts. The fat tires on this thing, I believe they're using about a 20-inch wheel, and they are, I think, 4.5 inch up front and maybe 5 inch in the rear. Typically, I'm not a huge fan of fat tires on bikes or e-bikes, but on the Super 73 RX, I think this one really makes sense. It's got great power to push those bigger tires around. It does act sort of as suspension, so if you don't have them all the way pumped up, it's going to cushion your ride a little bit. Cornering feels kind of like a motorcycle. Since this thing is already feeling like a scooter, motorcycle, or a moped, it feels nice that you can sort of like lean into corners like you would on an actual motorcycle. Now, being that these tires are kind of proprietary, it's going to be a little bit harder to actually change a flat if you run over a nail or something like that. Hopefully, I won't experience anything like that, but Super 73 also offers sort of like off-road style tires, which I saw when we were actually at the event down in Baja, Mexico. They had a Rhino Gray RX just like mine here, and it had super cool tires on it. I won't need to replace these tires anytime soon, but I like to know that there are other options out there if I want to switch things up in the future. Now this right here is an intersection that I'm not stoked on, but there is a bike lane. So because this thing can get up to about 30 miles an hour pretty quickly, it's honestly not that scary. Just like that, I'm doing 32 miles an hour, keeping up with traffic. This thing's great. I should really start considering this as like a little commuter. Where I live, stuff is a little bit further and out of the way, but man, if you live like in a city, proper city, this thing would be killer in like downtown Denver. You would definitely want to invest in a nice bike lock to keep this thing locked up. Definitely something that looks very stealable. Kind of cool styling, cool colors, just a really sought after bike. So definitely want to get a good lock if you're gonna commute on this thing and like lock it up outside. But yeah, given today's gas prices, like we were just talking about it on the last Moto Monday about how riding a motorcycle is really beneficial right now. This is really taking that to the next level. If you can commute to wherever you would typically go to, doing 30, 32 miles an hour, you don't really need to go any faster than that. You could put in a solid commute on this thing. It's good for the environment, super cheap because you're not paying for gas. The bike itself, though, is not super cheap. That's something that we haven't even talked about yet. This bike is expensive, but it makes sense that it's expensive. This is definitely one of the highest quality, if not the highest quality bike that I've ever reviewed before, and I straight up bought this thing from eBikes USA. The price when they are available is right around $3,600, so you're really getting into like motorcycle territory there, but motorcycles aren't for everyone. Super 73 also has some lower models that could definitely better fit your price point. I believe the cheapest version of a Super 73 might start at about $1,800, and I really like this bike. Most of the e-bikes that I test out on the channel, I eventually get rid of because it's not something that I enjoy riding all the time, just as like sort of a supplemental vehicle, if you want to call it that. But this RX is just so cool. I absolutely love this thing. Yes, they are expensive, but if you're going to use it as a commuter and ride it daily, you're not going to be paying insurance like you would on a motorcycle. There's little to no maintenance. You're not paying for fuel. I think if you're looking for a commuter e-bike and you're cool with a higher price point for something that is super high quality, this thing will eventually pay for itself. And it's a whole lot of fun to ride around too. Maybe in the future, I'll end up picking up like one of the lower end models for a review. It would definitely be cool to have more than one Super 73, that way Ashley could ride around with me. I think we might have to do that. I mean, that just kind of goes to show how much I actually enjoy this bike. The fact that I've already bought this one and I would definitely buy another one. I think we might have to make that happen. If you guys want to see a video on another Super 73 that they have out there on the market right now, let me know in the comments down below. Let's say if this video gets 1,000 likes, I'll pull the trigger on another Super 73. And now one more thought, because I know you guys are probably going to ask about it. The Super 73 electric motorcycle prototype that they announced a little while ago. I don't know if any of you guys saw that. I'm sure some of you have. I put a reservation on one, $73, completely refundable, the second I found out about that bike. I don't know any information about that bike outside of what Super 73 has sort of commented about on all of their posts, but if that bike comes to fruition anytime soon, there's a really good chance that I'm going to pull the trigger on that, because it looks super comparable to the Honda Grom, and I love the Grom. So that is a full electric motorcycle, so I think you're going to have to register it, plate it, possibly insure it, all that stuff. I think they claimed a range of like over 100 miles, 80 mile an hour top speed. No price point is set yet, so hopefully it's not like 10 grand, but there's a good chance that it could be. I'm really excited to see what Super 73 does with that, because I still have a little bit of room in the garage for some more motorcycles. So I think that is all that I had for my thoughts on the Super 73. We've done about probably 15 miles now, and I still have over half of the battery left. Unless I would come out specifically to do a long distance test on this thing, I don't think I'll ever ride this thing from completely charged to completely dead, just because that's a whole lot of riding. Like, we're talking a lot of miles there. Now that I know how this app works and how it sort of navigates you around on bike paths, around whatever type of urban environment that you're in, I think I might actually start commuting on this thing, like to the gym in the morning, if I need to run down to the corner store. I think I'm gonna actually start riding this thing a little bit more than I have been. So if I got any updates for you guys, I will leave them in the description down below in the future. Maybe I'll drop a comment and pin it down below so you guys know how the range is, how this thing's holding up. I've already got, I believe, over 100 or so miles on this thing, and it's super solid. Hopefully we can get 1,000 likes, and then I'll pull the trigger on another Super 73. If you guys make that happen, that video will come out soon thereafter. That's all that I got for today. Drop some questions down below, share this video with your friends, and if you're new to the channel, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every week. As always, thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.